So let's have a look. What's faster, an ROG 1070 Ti Strix or a Gigabyte G1 Gaming 1080? So the 1080 here, the G1, the Gigabyte 1080 is actually overclocked out of the box, and it's supposed to have binned GPU there. It's called Gauntlet or something, supposed to be a selected GPU. The 1070 Ti here, the Strix one, is not overclocked, so I'll be overclocking them both to their maximum, so it's fair, because obviously the 1080 is overclocked. Now this particular video I'm filming here, I already know the results between the two. They're priced pretty much the same. The 1070 Ti Strix is $799 Australian and the G1 Gaming 1080 Gigabyte is $819, so pretty close in price. Now just looking at them, the Gigabyte sort of looks like a SUV and like the Strix looks like a Hummer. There is a big difference between them. The Strix is a lot bigger. You can see it's chunkier, 2.5 slot, whereas the Gigabyte is only 2 slot. Now Gigabyte do have an extreme version of their 1080, but that's a lot more expensive, so it's not comparing graphics cards at around the same expense. So I think this is a fair comparison between the 1070 Ti and the 1080 Gigabyte versus ASUS. I will tell you here, the Gigabyte is already overclocked out of the box. It would only let me select 110% in the power settings to overclock it. I could only get around 50 megahertz on the clock and the GPU overclock, so it's already overclocked. I didn't expect it to overclock much more. So this 1070 Ti Strix card here, this overclocks like a champ, so we're talking like 208 megahertz on the core clock and around 500 megahertz on the memory there. Still, the Gigabyte 1080, being a 1080 with the faster memory, does still have a faster memory clock, but certainly in my testing here, the GPU on this Strix 1070 Ti will burst into the 2000s, whereas the Gigabyte here basically sticks in the 1900s or 1950. Also, when it comes to noise and temperature, the noise, I can't tell a great deal of difference between them. The Strix does run 5 degrees cooler when it's overclocked compared to the G1 overclocked. So it is a little bit quieter, but when you run it stock, it's like 10 degrees cooler, and virtually you don't hear the fans at all when it's running at its stock speeds. But overclocked, very similar noise. The Strix still is quieter and it does run cooler. So I have this Strix here. This is the Strix. You can see it's like a big chunky cooler there. Thick pipes, really big chunky 2.5 slotter here. One, as you can see, one just 8-pin there. This is the 1070 Ti Strix version. Here is the G1 Gaming. It's actually there, the fan's off, it's not running, so we'll test these benchmarks and then I'll put the 1070 Ti Strix in there. And the reason I'm testing in this Alienware is because I have an ASUS motherboard. I'm not saying it should perform any different using an ASUS graphics card versus a Gigabyte graphics card in an ASUS motherboard, but just to be fair, we'll put it on a neutral platform here and let's see how we go. Wow, have a look at that. We have both the scores here. On the left we have the G1 Gaming 1080 and on the right we have the Strix 1070 Ti, and wow, within the error of margin, pretty much identical scores there. The 1080 is just slightly faster within a B's diaphragm, and if you have a look at temperatures, the Strix is around 5 degrees cooler, and you can notice it is a little bit quieter because it is 5 degrees cooler at the end of the day. These are overclocked to their max, so the Strix actually runs cooler if it's not overclocked again, so it can be actually cooler than that. Now let's have a look at the supposition benchmark. On the left you have the G1 Gaming and on the right you have the ROG 1070 Ti Strix, and have a look at the scores. Again, within the margin of error. I couldn't even really put a percentage on that. I was expecting the 1080 to be at least up around the 10% faster, but this is amazing that they're pretty much exactly the same speed. And this advanced binning that's going on with this 1070 Ti Strix, you can tell that it has really good components in it because I can really overclock them and it's virtually the same speed as a 1080. Amazing. Now let's have a look at a gaming benchmark. We have a look at GTA 5 4K high and very high settings here. The score on the top, you have the Gigabyte G1 Gaming 1080, which is 79 frames per second, and on the bottom you have the ROG 1070 Ti Strix. Now we're talking about a 1.5 frame difference there. It's like nothing. It's unbelievable the difference. The 1070 Ti Strix is within a bee's diaphragm of that Gigabyte G1 game in 1080. That just amazes me. So I guess at the end of the day, my conclusion here is, considering they're around the same price, and when prices settle down, I expect maybe about $50 US difference between the two. Which one would you get? On the one hand, you have the 1070 Ti with that super cooler. You're going to be running overclocked at least 5-6 degrees cooler. When it's stock, it's going to be running up to 10 degrees cooler. It's quieter, and at the end of the day, the speed difference between the two, once you get the maximum performance out of them, you overclock both of them as much as you can, there is no difference. There's literally no difference there. So I didn't mean this to be like an ASUS versus Gigabyte battle. It just ended up that way. I guess now you know why Nvidia did not want their partners to overclock these 1070 Ti's, because they're virtually the same speed as the 1080s there. So if you actually want the best 1070 Ti, I think the Strix is the way to go there. You can see you can overclock it up to 1080 speeds there, no problem. It's very quiet. It runs so cool. Aura RGB. You also have a fan header where you can connect your case fan to that, and you can set it up that when your Strix fans ramp up, so does your case fan. So you can feed it with cool air there. Some great features there. I think I got to say it would have to be the best 1070 Ti out there. But let me know what you guys think. Which one would you buy? Let me know in the comments. So that's it, guys. I'd like to really thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video. And if you're new around here, why not subscribe? And until next time, guys, tally ho.